Let me know when the others are back so I can switch back to the thing. All right, so I'm just gonna pick up to after the intro. So what we're gonna cover today was we wanted to do a small overview of just talking about the various toolkits, in particular the .NET Community Toolkit, the MAUI Community Toolkit. Whoops, I went ahead. I didn't mean to do that. And the Windows Community Toolkit. And then we also wanted to talk about how you can contribute if you want to all of these projects. And then we just wanted to go into a Q&A session with any questions from the audience. So first, just a quick recap of what the community toolkits are all about. So these are a collection of libraries that are all open source. They're based on .NET, and they're specifically targeting different technologies. So we have like the MAUI Community Toolkit, the Windows Community Toolkit, and the .NET Community Toolkit, which is the one that I'm working on. They're all, as I mentioned, all open source on GitHub. They're all MIT licensed, and they're all part of the .NET community, the .NET Foundation. So these are the toolkits that we were going to cover today. So the Community Toolkit organization actually covers a whole set of different toolkits which can fit your needs depending on what you're doing. So one of these is the .NET Community Toolkit. And the main difference between these toolkits and the other ones is that it's not really targeting any specific framework or platform. It's just a collection of platform-agnostic helpers. So in particular, the .NET Community Toolkit contains the MVVM toolkit, along with all the source generators. These are probably Oh, I'm hearing some voices. Shall I go ahead or?
Go ahead. Until you hit something MAUI, I'll take over. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So yeah, we have the MVVM toolkit and the source generator, which are our libraries and helpers for building apps with the MVVM framework. We also have some high-performance helpers for like working in high-performance scenarios, like if you're pulling, I don't know, memory buffers and things like that. And we also have the diagnostics package, which contains helpers to efficiently validate parameters and methods, and also efficiently throwing exceptions. And then I'm going to hand it up to Gerald to talk about the MAUI Community Toolkit.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sergio, for saving us a little bit here. So I'm Gerald. I'm on the .NET MAUI engineering team here at Microsoft, and I also work on the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. So the toolkit, just like the one that Sergio described, we just have a set of things that will help you, but now from the .NET MAUI perspective, right? So we have like a lot of things that are in common, like behaviors, converters, all the stuff that you can use with examples specific to .NET MAUI that you keep kind of like inventing over and over again, right? If you're building apps with Xamarin before, now .NET MAUI, then you're probably going to have that invert Boolean converter, right? That's something that everyone uses. It's not really suited to be included in .NET MAUI directly, but there is tons of converters that you can use that way that are going to be useful in any of your projects. So instead of like taking that from your code to one project to another, and you just tweak it a little bit for that project, and now suddenly you have two converters, two versions, and it's going to be messy, right? So what we tried to do is combine all of those stuff, not just converters, but also behaviors, some animations, all that kind of stuff, into one toolkit, so you can pull down that toolkit probably as a pretty essential package in your .NET MAUI application, and you will have all that stuff. But we don't stop there. We also have like a little incubator, if you will, for UI control. So one of the things that we have as an extra control is the media element, right, with which you can play multimedia inside of your .NET MAUI app. I think we're going to talk about a little bit about that as well. There might be questions. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat. We're going to go into that. And we have like an expander. We have all kinds of cool controls in there that you can use for your .NET MAUI. And we have the C# markup extensions, which allows you to write your UI for .NET MAUI in a fluent way in C# code. That's what people like as well, instead of doing XAML. Michael? You want to talk a little bit about the Windows Community Toolkit?
Yeah, thanks, Gerald. So again, I'm Michael Hawker. Sorry for the troubles again before. First morning studio talk. So, we're smoothing out all the bumps for everyone else for the rest of the day. And I've worked on the Windows Community Toolkit for a number of years now. We have a whole set of animations, controls, extensions, and behaviors that all work with both WinUI 2, WinUI 3, and now Uno platform as of our latest release. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that release here in a second. But we also have our Windows Community Toolkit Labs, which is where we're incubating new ideas and controls and experiences. And some of those are even in our latest release as well. And I don't think, Sergio, you covered kind of the organization as a whole, correct? So jumping back a slide quickly, since we've just talked about all three of these different toolkits, we're actually part of a larger community toolkit organization on GitHub where all of our projects live, and all of our libraries are .NET based, of course. We're here at .NET Conf, where they're all open source up on GitHub under the MIT license, and we're all part of the .NET Foundation. So you can find our GitHub organization and the links to all of our projects and work that we do in that space at aka.ms/toolkit. And so, Sergey, I'll hand it back to you to dive into a little bit more details about the latest going on with the .NET Community Toolkit.
Thank you. So just to spend a couple of quick words on the .NET Community Toolkit in particular. So as I mentioned, this project contains a set of platform agnostic helpers and extensions for all .NET developers and for all projects. So doesn't matter if you're building like a WinUI 3 or UWP app on Windows, you could be using WinForms, WPF, you could be using MAUI or Avalonia or Platform, or even like an ASP.NET server. You can use all of these helpers here everywhere because they just target .NET and they have no specific dependencies on any specific platform. So once again, as I mentioned, they contain three main components. So the first one is the MVVM toolkit, which is our fast, modular, and cross-platform set of helpers to build applications using the MVVM architecture. We also have this high-performance package and the diagnostics package. And all of these components are also used by several inbox apps. So for instance, in the Microsoft Store, we're also using all of these three. I also know that the Photos app on Windows is using the MVVM toolkit, and there's probably more out there as well. So in particular, I want to call out the MVVM source generators, which are probably, as I said, the most popular feature that we have, which allow you to write applications using MVVM, but without all of the boilerplate code that's usually associated with having to set up all the MVVM, like property change notifications, commands, and all things like that. You can just let all of the generators write all of that boring code for you. And we also bundle a whole set of analyzers and code fixers, which are meant to help you out as you're writing and building this application. So for instance, they provide a lot of useful diagnostics that can tell you exactly when you're doing something wrong, so that you can spot errors earlier in the development process rather than having just your app crash at runtime or just not work as you would expect. And next, I also wanted to in particular call out, we're looking into supporting partial properties, fingers crossed for C#13 in the .NET Community Toolkit, because I know that's one of probably the most requested features. So we're definitely going to look into that as soon as they become available. And with that, I'm going to hand that back over to Gerald to talk about the MAUI Community Toolkit.
Perfect. I already see a lot of good questions coming in. We're going to get into that for a second. But like I already mentioned, I got a little bit ahead of myself. So here you can see an overview of the things that we provide with like the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. And the really cool thing, I think, is especially with well, let's call it the MVVM toolkit, the .NET Community Toolkit, it works so well together, both with our .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, but also with the Windows one. So it all kind of like fits together really well. And we all have our own personal unique strengths for all of those. So we have like extensions, converted behaviors, already mentioned those, media element drawing views, so you can draw things on screen with your touch devices or on desktop. We have support for like all the platforms that are supported for .NET MAUI as well. So that's macOS, Windows, iOS, Android, and Tizen. So we got support for all of those. The C# markup extensions, already mentioned those. I think Brandon will join us in a little bit. He'll probably talk maybe a little bit about that, with which you can skip XAML altogether, which you can totally do. Everything you can do in XAML, you can do with C# code, but this will just tweak the syntax a little bit so that it will be a little bit easier to work with. We just released version 7, so we have a couple of packages as part of the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, because like for the media element, we depend on a couple of other packages to implement that, and we don't want to force those dependencies through like our main package. So we've broken it up in a couple of little things, and the versions are not really aligned. But our main package, so the Community Toolkit MAUI, we just released version 7.0 together with .NET 8, with .NET 8 support at the same day. So that's really amazing. And also we have, I think, just as you, do you also do the community stand-up? We have a live community stand-up each first Thursday of every month, where we kind of do the same thing, do Q&As and talk with you with what's our plans and whatnot. And of course, from this place, a big shout out to our contributors, because this is all open source and we see a lot of love coming in and help. Because we work at Microsoft, but at least for me, like it's a little bit different also between toolkits. But at least for us, the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, we're working on this besides our day job, right? So big thank you to all our contributors for helping us out there.
Thanks, Gerald. Yeah, it's something we need to do more of, like having a community stand up and stuff. We're always looking at in the toolkit about how we work with the community, and but we do everything up on GitHub, and we are connected to the UWP community Discord server. So there's a lot of chat and discussion going on there. So we're always excited when we're getting feedback and talking about people and their scenarios. And so, I talked a little bit about the Windows Community Toolkit before. Our animations are kind of one of our more popular packages that have both patterns for doing C# and XAML. We have a whole bunch of different behaviors and controls. Many WPF polyfills. So if you're coming from WPF to WinUI and you're missing something, look in the Community Toolkit. We have a lot of different things there, like Uniform Grid is one of the bigger ones, Wrap Panel, some of the Grid Splitter, some of those kind of staples from WPF that you might be looking for are in the Windows Community Toolkit. And we just did our release of our 8.0 version. This was a big switch over and kind of basically how we build the entire Windows Community Toolkit itself. And so we have a single code base now that can both allow you to build applications with WinUI 2, WinUI 3, and Uno platforms. So if you're looking to go cross-platform that way with your existing Windows knowledge of XAML, then you can do that there. And we unified all of our namespaces. So now, like migrating between any of those options from WinUI 2 to Uno or WinUI 2 to WinUI 3, there's no kind of changes you need to do for the toolkit outside of maybe a NuGet package, and then you're good to go. Everything else is the same. And we updated and did a refresh of all of our styles of our components as well. And a lot of that came out of our Windows Community Toolkit labs, where we're building all these new components and working with community members on new ideas, trying things out, and kind of polishing everything, getting it ready, and being really solid before we ship it out as part of the main toolkit. And we've talked a lot about GitHub and open source, working with the community. Contributing is really the core of what that all means, and really drives these toolkits forwards. It's really the voice of the community that helps us understand what we should help direct and focus and drive these things forward. And it's just even trying things out, providing feedback, jumping in on an issue and discussion, providing insights on what's working for you, especially what the positive things, not just what doesn't work and what's broken, is really meaningful and helpful to us. Even if it's just participating in the discussion, like that's a contribution, and that's a ton of value to us running these things to learn more. So Gerald, Sergio, I don't know if you have any more thoughts in this space,
no, that's absolutely true. Like any piece is basically feedback, and it's definitely highlighting the positive stuff. That's good too, right? Like there's not really good channels for it, but we definitely appreciate that. And we're doing this for you and with you. So especially like stuff that we want to work on, stuff that's important to you, right? So if you see an issue or a proposal for implementing something new, just give it a little emoji thumbs up on the GitHub thing. For the .NET MAUI toolkit, at least, we have a very extensive process. It can be a little bit daunting if you look at it at first, but once you get the hang of it, it can go pretty quickly. So where you put in a proposal in a discussion first, and we go through a couple of stages just to know that we have like the right thing that we're going to work on, how we're going to work on it, and really think ahead of like, hey, how we're going to implement it. So I think that's for all the projects. Like, hey, have a look at the contributing MD. Like we set it up in the README. Just fine for each project that you might be thinking of contributing to. Check out the guidelines there and what you want to do, and reach out to any of the people, because we're here to help you be successful with that as well.
Yeah.
So
if you want to pick up an issue and make a code fix, that's great. Just let people know first. Comment on the issue. Say, hey, is anyone working on this? Because you don't know, 3 other people might have been collaborating or doing something. So just communication is kind of the king there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sergio, any extra thoughts before we move on to Q&A?
No, one thing that I want to call out is like one of the things I love about this is how a lot of the features often come together by like combining some internal asks with things from the community. Like for instance, the async relay command from the MVVM toolkit comes to mind. Like we originally wrote that because we were using that in the Microsoft Store, but then we also went out like on Discord, on GitHub, on Twitter, and asked everyone like from the community, hey, do you think this would also apply to your scenarios? Is there anything else that maybe we don't need, but you might need, or you think it's generally viable? And so the final set of features was actually a combination of the two. And so it's pretty cool to see how those can come together and create something that's just that works so well for everyone.
That's really the history of the MVVM toolkit itself. It was really
Yep.
driven by the community and all these needs and asks and scenarios that came together to make it work. So we're going to pull in Niels and Brandon, who work on the Windows Community Toolkit and the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, to help us answer questions. We know our question time got a little bit shortened from what we wanted. Sorry for the technical difficulties before, but we see some really great questions in chat, so we'll pull some of those up. And if we don't get to your question today, we apologize, but join us up on GitHub and ask in our discussions there, and that's the best way to kind of reach out to us, and we'll be sure to try and answer as many as we can.
Absolutely. So I already got a couple of good questions that I can pull up here. Just maybe a little quick introduction, one line. Niels, who are you?
Yeah, sure. I'm Niels Lauta. I work with Michael on the Windows Community Toolkit.
Perfect. Brandon?
Hey, everybody. Good to be back. Used to work at Microsoft, was there for about 7 years, and started the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit a few years ago before I left, but am at AWS now working as a .NET developer advocate.
Cool. So you can see, and that's just the way we set it up, like at least on our side, like we have a core team working on this. So we have a couple of key figures that help drive stuff. But, if you're from the community, don't be daunted by that. We're not some secret club. You can join in, but we just have a couple of key people identified that help us drive the things forward and have a little bit of rights. So you can, we can trigger the builds and that kind of stuff. So, okay, let's just jump into a first question here. Are Windows and MAUI controls mutually exclusive? And you were very enthusiastic about that one, Michael. So I'm just going to let you talk about that for a while.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And that's kind of why we have the different toolkits as well. Each kind of tech stack has its own quirks and kind of nuances to it. And so the Windows Community Toolkit is really focused on building on top of the WinUI libraries, which are focused on Windows. And then we realized that since we had to support both WinUI 2 and WinUI 3, adding Uno platform in there, since it's kind of the kind of analog and kind of leverages just the same exact code that you would on Windows, was kind of an easy add. But MAUI is kind of its own flavor and specific builds so that it gets the different cross-platform bits and builds on top of WinUI, but in a different way. So they're kind of really mutually exclusive in that regard. And if you're really looking for helpers and controls, that's where the MVVM toolkit and the .NET Community Toolkit come in, because those are platform agnostic. So you can use the MVVM toolkit with MAUI, you can use it with WinUI, you can use it with WPF. I don't think we've tested Silverlight. I've seen some questions come up in chat about that. That was beyond our scope of looking at it. We know some people have tried using it with Blazor as well. And I've even used it with some game engines with the Messenger class, which is amazing. So with Unity and Godot, there's even stuff in there that you can leverage, and especially in the high performance package as well. I'm plugging Sergio's toolkit now too, but it's great. So
we're all friends. That's
yeah,
good.
we're all friends. Exactly.
All right, let's go to the next one. Actually, let's skip to this one first. So actually, Sergio can probably talk about this. Does MVVM Source Gen work with Visual Basic and F#?
No, the source generators are specifically for C#. Yeah, they only target that language. Yeah.
Okay, so the toolkit does not work with these type of project at all?
You can use the rest of the MVVM toolkit from
but just not
any other language, but the source generator specifically will not trigger. They will only support it for C#.
Perfect. Well, there you have it. So speaking of Silverlight, you said it, and then it comes up. So this is specific. I don't think this is specific to Silverlight, other than this is one control that lived in Silverlight and apparently not anywhere else. Niels, the Silverlight pivot viewer. Actually, here is a quick side note to MVVM Toolkit for Windows. With the different toolkits, I noticed that there's sometimes a little bit confusion. So we have 3 separate things, and I totally understand that you might get lost sometimes, like what fits where. But the MVVM Toolkit is different from the Windows Toolkit, and I guess this would fit more in the Windows,
or even the MAUI. And the MVVM toolkit started in the Windows Community Toolkit, so there's some history there, and so we understand the confusion, and anything we can do to subside that confusion, we're always happy to help with. But yeah, I remember the pivot viewer controller is this massive thing where you could like slice and dice everything. And Niels, do you remember that control?
Yeah, I used it, but that's a long time ago. But yeah, no, we don't have any plans to bring that over. But I mean, you can always like open up an issue or discussion up on the repo, and we can discuss there to see if there's any needs from the community, or maybe even if people want to contribute, that you can definitely do that on the repo, and we can discuss there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mentioned earlier. Like just open up the issue, see
Right.
if it gathers a lot of thumbs up or engagement,
Right.
and then that will be a signal of like, hey, we need to implement this, right? So
Yeah.
that's definitely one as well. I'm trying to find here while we're talking something for Brandon to talk about.
Ooh, I saw one from Claudio. Claudio was asking about a Blazor toolkit, which isn't me, but did want to shout that out. So Claudio, no, we don't have a Blazor toolkit yet, but we'd love one. So if you're interested, reach out to any of us, because that was the whole idea behind this Community Toolkit org, was we could continue building more toolkits, and we've definitely heard demand for a Blazor toolkit. So if anybody out there is interested, wants to lead the charge, let us know, and we'll get you set up.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've heard as well. People are really excited about Blazor, and of course there are just general .NET helpers in the .NET Community Toolkit. So there are stuff that people we know use from that in Blazor. But in terms of like Blazor controls and stuff that's very specific to the Blazor stack, it's not something we've investigated yet. I know there's some other kind of control libraries from Microsoft that are for Blazor, and so maybe that's something where we can take one of those projects and work with community to bring something in and work with that in the future. But we're always listening and trying to move forward, and it's really just about garnering that massive amount of support so that we can push everything forward and talk to the teams at Microsoft to get their support, because we work with the engineers here that work on these technologies to say like, hey, we want to do these things, and we're trying to bridge gaps between what platform currently delivers and what we see maybe not 100% of people needing in every single scenario, but maybe it's still 60% is something that the toolkits really kind of fill in those needs and gaps for.
I think this I guess this maybe for the non-English native speakers. WPF polyfill, is this polygon filling, not some weird JS library? I think this is more of a term of like whenever you come from WPF and you want to go to WinUI, it will help you convert your code between these two projects, right? And
exactly.
polyfill is a term to describe.
I think maybe it comes from the web space, but polyfill is typically something that means like it's filling in an API that existed on something else, either another platform or the previous version of the technology, and is bridging that gap, and basically just a drop-in replacement for that previous API that's kind of allows you to tack that on. I think we're running out of time here.
Yeah.
Maddie might want to jump in and let us know if we need to vamp for the next session or not. But
no,
Maddie said we have 2 more minutes. So
okay, great.
Yeah.
You
guys have time for one more question. So
okay.
One more, and then I'll kick you out.
It's got to be a good one.
Yeah. So did you see a good one, Maddie, or?
No, yeah. What's the future of UWP? Here's a loaded one. What's the future of UWP?
The hardest question
in the Community Toolkit?
I guess that's more geared towards the Windows Community Toolkit, and that is why we kind of went and did a whole bunch of work for our new release. We kind of rebuilt our whole process of how we work and rebuilt the whole kind of technology of how we build the toolkit itself, and building this single code base that really focuses on making it easy to have these isolated components and the documentation and the samples and everything related to one thing in one spot in the repository, so that we could make it easy to, with minimal effort to ship that same component and code for both the existing UWP WinUI 2 platform, as well as the upcoming Windows App SDK WinUI 3 tech that's getting better with every release. And so it's really about the work we've done in the 8.0 release. We really encourage people to upgrade, because that's going to let you seamlessly transition between UWP and the Windows App SDK and WinUI 2 and WinUI 3. So if you upgrade and spend that little bit of time with the breaking changes for 8.0 and have your whole app on the 8.0 release of the Windows Community Toolkit, migrating from UWP to the Windows App SDK from the toolkit side there's no work. You're done. So
cool.
Let me just bring up the last slide here with links to all of our resources. So of course, download .NET 8. I've upgraded all my things already, and it was working perfectly. So I suggest you do too. aka.ms/get.NET 8 with like the little hyphens in between. And there's all of our links. I'm not going to really call them out all to you. You can read it yourself. But it's basically aka.ms toolkit, and then whatever the toolkit that you're interested in.
We're pretty easy to find.
Yeah, we're pretty easy or use your favorite search engine and find us that way, right? So
cool.
That will work as well. Thank you all so much for joining. The great questions, the great interactions, although we wanted to have more time, but we had a little rough start. But thank you so much for joining us.
Join us on GitHub.
Yeah.
we're excited to talk to you all.
Thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye.